Hey everyone, tonight we're seeking refuge from the coming storm. You're on a muddy road in the late autumn, and in the distance you see your destination, a massive stone castle, its grey walls rising into a cold, overcast sky. The air is sharp with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, and you can hear the faint, lonely sound of a horn echoing from the battlements. But the real enemy isn't an invading army. It's the season that is about to lay siege to this fortress for the next 4 months, the medieval winter. Let's be honest, in a medieval castle, you were far more likely to die from the freezing draft in your own bedchamber than you were from an enemy's arrow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where in the world you're listening from, so please drop your city and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. A castle is a fortress, its high stone walls built to keep armies out. But for a few months every year, those same walls become a prison, designed to keep a fragile bubble of warmth and life in, while a silent, relentless enemy lays siege from the outside. That enemy is winter. You are a guest, arriving just as the first chill bites the air, and you are about to learn how to survive inside a fortress against the frost. Your journey ends as you approach the castle. It rises from the autumn landscape like a natural formation of grey stone, its towers and battlements stark against a low, bruised-looking sky. From a distance, it is the very picture of safety and power, a man-made mountain built to withstand any assault. You hear the call of a horn from a watchtower, and the great drawbridge is lowered for you with a groan of chains. You pass under the immense, spiked portcullis and into the outer bailey. The courtyard is a bustling world of its own stable hands, lead horses, blacksmiths hammer at a forge, and the smell of wood smoke and livestock hangs in the air. You have reached your sanctuary. You are led from the open, windswept courtyard into the castle's heart, the great hall. You expect to be greeted by a wave of warmth, a refuge from the biting autumn wind. Instead, the first thing you feel is a deep, penetrating, and tomb-like cold. It is a cold that radiates from the very stones, a chill that seems to sink into your bones. The hall is a vast, cavernous space, its high, timbered ceiling lost in shadow. The light is dim, filtering in through high, narrow, arrow-slit windows that are designed to keep arrows out, not to let sunlight in. In the center of the hall, a massive fire roars in a hearth so large you could walk into it. It is a bonfire brought indoors, but its heat is a lie. You feel its intense, scorching warmth on your face if you stand close, but if you take just a few steps back, the profound, damp chill of the stone walls reclaims you instantly. You notice that not all the smoke is finding its way up the great, cavernous chimney. A hazy, acrid layer hangs in the air, stinging your eyes. This is a far cry from a cozy home. It is a cave with a fire in it. This is the great paradox of the castle, and your first crucial lesson in medieval survival. The very features that make it an impregnable fortress also make it a hopelessly inefficient home. The thick stone walls, so effective at stopping a siege engine, are also a perfect conduit for the cold, constantly pulling warmth out of the air. The high ceilings, a symbol of the Lord's status, create a vast, impossible-to-heat volume of air. The small, defensive windows offer no comfort, only drafts. The source material for this series notes that for pioneers, the first winter was the season that tested every soul. You realize, standing in this magnificent, freezing hall, that the same is true here. You watch the inhabitants of the castle. They are not shivering, they are accustomed to this life. They are dressed in layers of heavy wool, their movements brisk and purposeful. They cluster near the fire, then move away into the cold to perform their duties, seemingly unbothered. You, in your traveler's cloak, feel the chill in a way they do not. You are the newcomer, the one who has not yet learned the rules of this cold kingdom. As evening falls, you are shown to your chamber. It is a small Spartan room with a single shuttered window. A servant has lit a small fire in a modest fireplace, but like the great fire in the hall below, its warmth is a small flickering island in an ocean of cold. The stone floor, though covered with a thin layer of rushes, feels like a sheet of ice through the soles of your boots. You are left alone. You huddle near the small fire, but you cannot escape the feeling of the cold stone walls pressing in on you. You look out the window at the darkening, windswept landscape. You have found your shelter from the coming winter, but you now understand that the greatest enemy is not outside the walls. It is the walls themselves. Your first night in a medieval castle is about to begin, and with it, your first true lesson in the long, cold art of survival. In the modern world, meat is a neat package, a thing separate from the life it once was. But in the medieval world, there was no such separation. To survive the winter, you had to confront the bloody, brutal arithmetic of life and death. You are about to witness the great culling, a necessary slaughter that is not an act of cruelty, but a solemn and vital preparation for the long, hungry months ahead. A few days after your arrival, you are awakened by a change in the castle's usual rhythm. The normal morning sounds of the bustling courtyard are replaced by a commotion, a chorus of animal cries that are sharp with distress. You make your way to the outer bailey and are met with a scene of organized, purposeful chaos. You see the bulk of the castle's livestock, dozens of pigs, sheep and cattle herded into temporary pens. These are the animals you have seen grazing peacefully in the fields for days, fattened on the last of the summer's green grass. Today, their purpose is to be transformed from living creatures into a winter's worth of food. You are a witness to the autumn slaughter, a crucial and unsentimental ritual in the medieval calendar. You watch as the castle's butchers, their aprons already stained with blood, work with a grim and practiced efficiency. The air, once filled with the smell of hay and wood smoke, now carries the sharp, metallic scent of fresh blood. The sounds are jarring, the squeal of a pig, the lowing of a nervous cow, the sharp thud of an axe. As you watch this brutal but necessary process, you begin to understand the cold logic that governs it. A castle, you learn, cannot afford to keep its entire herd alive through the winter. There is simply not enough hay and fodder stored to feed them all. To try and keep every animal would be to ensure that all of them, and perhaps the people of the castle as well, would starve by the time the snows melted. It is a fundamental law of survival in this age. If the family hadn't stored enough firewood or food, the months ahead could mean starvation. And so, a grim calculation is made. The strongest bull, the best milk cow, a few healthy ewes and a ram are separated from the others. This is the core breeding stock, the future of the herd, who will be carefully sheltered and fed through the winter. All the rest must be culled. It is a brutal arithmetic, trading the lives of the many for the survival of the few, and by extension, the survival of the entire castle. The work does not end with the killing. You see the entire household mobilized in a frantic effort to preserve the sudden bounty. Nothing is wasted. You watch as the carcasses are expertly butchered, the prime cuts of meat separated from the lesser ones. The process is a testament to the versatility of the household, reminiscent of the resourcefulness of frontier women who were also butchers. You see the women at long tables, their hands deep in the grim work of cleaning intestines for sausage casings and carefully rendering the animal fat in large, bubbling cauldrons. This tallow, you learn, will not be for eating. It will be for making the smoky tallow candles that will light the castle through the long winter nights. Most importantly, you see the salt. Sacks and barrels of coarse grey salt are brought out. You watch as the butchers rub the salt deep into every cut of pork and beef before packing them tightly into wooden barrels, where they will cure and be preserved. This is how they will have meat in January, transformed into the crates of salted pork that sustain travelers and households alike. The autumn slaughter is the foundational act that makes a winter diet possible. As dusk falls, the last of the work is being finished in the flickering torchlight. The courtyard is being scrubbed clean. The air is no longer filled with the cries of animals, but with the sharp, clean smell of salt and the rich, woody scent of the smokehouse, where hams and sides of bacon are now being hung. The bloody, chaotic work is done. A somber, pragmatic quiet settles over the castle. You feel no sense of celebration, but one of grim satisfaction. The castle's larder is about to be full. A great sacrifice has been made, and the long siege of winter can now be faced. In the modern world, we have conquered time. We freeze our food, sealing it away from the slow, inevitable march of decay. But in the medieval world, the war against rot was a constant, desperate battle. The enemies were invisible, and the weapons were simple and ancient, salt and smoke. You were about to enter the armory of that war, the castle larder. The bloody, chaotic work of the autumn slaughter is done. The courtyard has been scrubbed clean, but a faint, metallic scent still hangs in the air. The fresh meat from the cull has disappeared, and you are about to find out where it has gone. You are taken on a tour by the castle steward, a grim and efficient man who holds the keys to the household's survival. He leads you down a set of steep stone steps into the cold, dark underbelly of the castle. You enter a large, low-ceilinged cellar, and you are immediately hit by an intense, overpowering smell. It is the sharp, clean, and almost sterile scent of salt. The air is so thick with it that it stings your eyes and you can taste it on your lips. This is the salt house, and it is the first line of defense against the coming hunger. You see several men still at work at a long, heavy table, rubbing handfuls of coarse, grey salt into the last of the beef and pork, working it deep into every cut and crevice. But your attention is drawn to the rows upon rows of massive wooden barrels that line the stone walls. You watch as the salted cuts of meat are packed tightly into these barrels, each layer covered with another thick layer of salt until the barrel is full. A brine is then poured over the top to seal it. The steward explains the process with a grim satisfaction. This, he tells you, is how they will have meat in the depths of winter. You are looking at the future of the castle's diet: barrels of salted beef, barrels of salted herring and cod, and, most importantly, barrels of salted pork. It is a method as old as time, a simple chemical warfare waged against the invisible microbes of decay. From the sharp, clean cold of the salt house, you are led back outside to a small, dark, windowless stone building at the edge of the courtyard. As the steward opens the heavy wooden door, you are hit by a completely different smell. It is a thick, rich, and acrid cloud of cool wood smoke, a smell so dense it is almost a physical presence. Your eyes begin to water. This is the smokehouse. As your eyes adjust to the gloom, you can make out shapes hanging in the thick, swirling smoke. From the high rafters, you see dozens of hams and sides of bacon, their surfaces slowly turning a deep, rich mahogany brown. You see long strings of sausages, twisted into tight links. The narration explains the ancient magic at work here. The cool smoke slowly dehydrates the meat, while the chemical compounds in the smoke, the phenols and acids, act as a powerful antimicrobial agent, preventing bacteria from taking hold. The smoke is not just a flavor, it is a shield. You spend what feels like hours in these dark, pungent chambers, and you begin to understand that the larder is the true treasury of the castle. A lord's power and wealth are not just measured in the number of knights he can summon, but in the number of barrels of salted fish in his cellar and the number of hams in his smokehouse. The contents of these rooms are the fuel that will keep the entire community of the castle alive through the long, dead months of winter, a time when food was rationed with the utmost care. You finally emerge from the smokehouse back into the crisp, clean autumn air. You take a deep breath, and you look up at the great stone walls of the castle. You now see the fortress in a new light. Its walls and towers are not just a defense against invading armies. They are the guardian of this precious, hard-won larder. They are a vault, protecting the life-giving horde of salt and smoke from the relentless, patient siege of winter. A feast is a celebration of meat, a loud and bloody affair, but a civilization is built on a quieter, more patient foundation. It is built on the grain that can be stored, the bean that can be dried, and the root that can sleep peacefully in the dark earth. You have seen the larder of salt and smoke. Now you will see the true treasury of the castle, the harvest of the earth. The steward leads you from the intense, acrid air of the smokehouse to a large, sturdy stone building on the castle grounds. This is the granary, and you understand immediately that it is as vital to the castle's defense as any stone wall or watchtower. As the heavy wooden door swings open, you are greeted by a cool, dry, and surprisingly sweet smell, the scent of thousands of bushels of harvested grain. You step inside. The sheer scale of the provision is astonishing. You see massive wooden bins, taller than a man, filled to the brim with wheat, barley, and oats. In another section, hundreds of heavy sacks are stacked almost to the rafters, containing the flour that will become the staple of the winter diet. The steward explains that this is the source of the two pillars of medieval life, bread and ale. Without this grain, there would be no hearty loaves for the table and no liquid bread to provide precious calories and a small measure of cheer through the dark months. You see several large, well-fed cats patrolling the granary, their silent, predatory movements the castle's primary defense against the constant threat of rats and mice. In an adjoining room, you find the dry stores. Your eyes are met with sack after sack of dried beans and peas. The steward calls them the meat of the common man. You learn that these will be a vital source of protein in the monotonous winter diet, added to the great cauldron of pottage to make the simple, hardy, and endlessly repetitive meals more substantial. Hanging from the rafters above, you see bunches of dried herbs, thyme, rosemary, and sage, their fragrant, dusty scent, a faint promise of flavor in the bland months to come. Your tour then takes you to its final, and perhaps most important, destination. The steward takes a lantern and leads you to a low, heavy door, which he unbolts. You descend a set of steep, worn stone steps into the deep subterranean cold beneath the castle. You have entered the root cellar. The air here is cold, damp, and smells of rich, clean earth. It is a world of absolute darkness, broken only by the small, flickering flame of your guide's lantern. As he raises the light, you see the earthly treasures that will sustain the castle. In long, shallow bins filled with sand, you see the pale, ghostly forms of hundreds of turnips and parsnips. In another section, you see the bright orange of carrots and the deep red of beets, their colors shockingly vibrant in the gloom. Great, braided ropes of onions and garlic hang from the low, stone ceiling like strange, subterranean chandeliers. On wooden shelves, you see row upon row of hardy cabbages. The steward explains the simple, ancient science of this place. The deep, constant cold of the earth, combined with the humidity, slows the natural process of decay, keeping these root vegetables fresh and edible for most of the winter. This dark, silent cellar is the castle's only source of vitamins, the only defense against the sicknesses that come from a diet of nothing but preserved meat and grain. You ascend the steps, leaving the cold, earthy darkness behind and emerging into the fading autumn light. Your tour is complete. You have seen the full arsenal of the castle's defenses against the coming winter. You now understand that every meal for the next 6 months has already been planned for, harvested, and preserved through an immense amount of foresight and labor. The steward explains that all this food will be carefully rationed. The castle is now a self-contained ship, fully provisioned for its long, difficult voyage through the frozen sea of winter. In the modern world, fire is a luxury, a romantic flicker in a fireplace. But in the medieval world, fire was the beating heart of survival. It was the only thing that stood between you and the crushing, absolute cold of the winter night. The quest for gold drove men across continents, but the quest for firewood was a humbler and far more vital daily struggle. You are about to join that quest. The preparations you have witnessed so far, the slaughter, the salting, the storing, have all been about food. But you now learn that food is useless if it cannot be cooked, and a stone castle is a tomb if it cannot be heated. You leave the relative shelter of the castle walls and follow a group of peasants into the cold, quiet woods that surround the estate. Their task is to gather the fuel that will keep the castle alive through the winter. You quickly learn that this is not a simple matter of chopping down trees. The woods, and everything in them, belong to the Lord. To cut down a living tree is a serious crime, a form of poaching that could be punished with a whipping or even mutilation. The peasants, you discover, are operating under a set of ancient rites known as estovers, which grant them permission to gather wood for specific, essential purposes. Today, they are gathering fireboat, wood for the fire. Their methods are defined by their limited rights. You watch as they scour the forest floor, gathering deadfall the branches and twigs that have been brought down by the wind and autumn storms. But there is not enough on the ground to heat a castle for a single night. You are then a witness to the famous, traditional method of gathering wood by hook or by crook. You see a peasant take up a long pole with a crude hook at the end, a shepherd's crook. He finds a dead branch high in the canopy of an oak tree, snags it with the hook, and with a great effort, pulls it down, sending it crashing to the forest floor. Another man uses a billhook, a long pole with a curved blade, to saw at and break off dead limbs. This is what the rite allows. You can take any dead wood you can reach from the ground with your hook or your crook. It is a slow, difficult, and often dangerous way to harvest fuel. The work does not end there. Once the wood is on the ground, it must be processed. You are reminded that tools were limited. Just axes, grit, and guesswork. You watch the men and women work with simple hand axes and small saws, chopping the larger branches into manageable lengths. The sound of their work is a steady, rhythmic percussion in the quiet, cold woods. The final task is to transport the wood. Some of it is bundled with twine and hauled by hand. You watch as entire families, including the children, struggle under the weight of these heavy bundles. Larger logs are chained and hauled by oxen, dragged slowly and painstakingly back towards the castle. You join this slow procession, and you feel the immense, grinding effort required for every single piece of wood. You arrive back at the castle, and you see where all this labor is directed. Against one of the high stone walls of the outer bailey is a structure of almost monumental scale, the castle's woodpile. It is a small mountain of carefully stacked logs, branches, and twigs, protected from the rain by a simple roof. It is hundreds of feet long and taller than a man. You stand before it in awe, understanding now the sheer volume of fuel required to keep the great hall's fire roaring and the dozens of smaller fireplaces in the kitchens and private chambers burning day and night for the next 5 months. This woodpile is the castle's battery, its stored energy. Without it, the food in the larder could not be cooked, and the cold would become a lethal, unstoppable invader. It is a fundamental law of survival in this age. If the family hadn't stored enough firewood or food, the months ahead could mean starvation or freezing. As dusk falls, you watch the last of the peasants bring in their loads for the day. Their faces are etched with exhaustion. You have just witnessed the gathering of one of the 3 essential pillars of winter survival: shelter, food, and fire. A fortress in summer is an open and breathing thing, its gates open to the sun, its windows to the breeze. But as winter approaches, the fortress must transform. It must pull in upon itself, seal every crack and every pore, and hold its breath for the long, cold months. You are about to witness the sealing of the castle, the great, final exhalation before the deep sleep of winter. The last of the food has been preserved. The woodpile stands as a monument to a summer of labor, and a new, final phase of preparation begins. This is the work of transforming the castle itself from an open, airy summer residence into a sealed fortress against the frost. The enemy is no longer the rot or the coming scarcity. It is the cold itself, and its greatest ally is the draft. You are in the Great Hall, and you feel that familiar bone-deep chill radiating from the vast bare stone walls. You watch as a team of servants struggles under the weight of enormous rolled-up bundles of fabric. These are the castle's tapestries, and you now understand their true winter purpose. You witness the great, labor-intensive process of hanging them. The heavy woolen cloths are hoisted up and hung from iron hooks set high on the walls, covering the cold, unforgiving stone with a layer of woven artistry. You look at the images depicted on them, heroic hunting scenes, grim battles, and solemn religious figures. They are beautiful, a display of the Lord's immense wealth, but their beauty is secondary to their function. The tapestries are a form of insulation, trapping a crucial layer of air between the fabric and the stone, preventing the chill from radiating into the room. It is the castle's equivalent of the peasant's desperate effort to ensure the gaps between logs were sealed with mud and moss to keep out the wind. Next, your attention is drawn to the floor. The old, trampled rushes from the summer and autumn, now flattened and filled with dirt and discarded scraps of food, are swept out in a great, dusty cleaning. For a short time, the bare stone floor is exposed, and you feel the cold seeping up through the soles of your boots, a reminder of how the earth itself froze solid in winter. Then, servants bring in fresh rushes, cut from the riverbank and dried for this purpose. The air fills with a clean, sweet, grassy scent as they spread a thick, new layer across the entire floor. You learn that fragrant herbs like lavender and mint are often mixed in, their scent released as people walk, helping to combat the odors of a household confined indoors for months. This thick, organic carpet is another vital layer of insulation, a barrier between the living world above and the cold stone below. Finally, you follow a carpenter as he goes from room to room, inspecting the windows. You are reminded of the simple windows, just holes covered with animal hide or greased paper that you have seen in peasants' huts. Here in the castle, the windows are a sign of wealth, small panes of glass set in lead, but they are still a primary source of heat loss. The carpenter's work is focused on the heavy, internal wooden shutters. You watch him oiling the great iron hinges, fitting new strips of leather around the edges to seal any gaps, and ensuring that the heavy iron bars that lock them in place are secure. As dusk falls on this final day of preparation, you are back in the Great Hall. The change is remarkable. The tapestries on the walls absorb both the sound and the cold, making the vast room feel smaller, quieter, and more intimate. The fresh rushes on the floor release a sweet, clean scent. You watch as a servant bars the heavy shutters over a window, the solid thump of the wooden bar a final definitive seal against the howling wind outside. The castle feels different now. It is darker, more enclosed, more womb-like. It no longer feels like a grand hall for holding court, but a shelter, a refuge against the coming storm. The fortress has pulled up its drawbridge, not against an army, but against the season itself. The preparations are complete. The siege of winter can begin. In the deep of winter, a home is not a collection of rooms, but a single central fire. All life shrinks and gravitates towards that one point of warmth and light. The great hall of the castle is no longer a place of grand ceremony. It has become the entire world, a noisy, smoky, and crowded sanctuary where a whole community huddles together to survive. You are about to enter this world within walls. You step out of the biting cold of the castle courtyard and push through a heavy oak door. You are immediately hit by a wall of sound, warmth, and smell. You have entered the great hall, the beating heart of the castle's winter life. The contrast with the silent, frozen world outside is absolute. Your senses are overwhelmed. The first thing you feel is the heat, a wave of blessed warmth from a fireplace so large it looks like the mouth of a dragon, with whole logs crackling and roaring within it. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, roasting meat, wet wool, and the close human scent of dozens of bodies gathered in one space. The sound is a constant, lively din. The chatter of voices, the sharp bark of a hunting hound, the laughter of children, and the distant, melodic strumming of a lute. Much like how a pioneer's fiddle pushed back the darkness, this single, vast stone chamber has become the entire world for the castle's inhabitants. The life that was once spread across the fields, the courtyards, and the village has now contracted into this one smoky, vibrant room. You see the lord and his family at the high table on a raised dais, but they are not separate from the life of the hall. They are merely the chief spectators of the ongoing play. Below them, long, rough-hewn trestle tables are crowded with every level of the castle's society. You see knights and squires, their armor now replaced with heavy woolen tunics, playing games of chess. You see the castle servants, their work done for the moment, sharing a cup of ale. You see the women of the household, their heads bent over their sewing, their hands busy with the endless task of mending clothes. On the rush-covered floor, a pack of hounds lies as close to the fire as they can get, their fur steaming. Children dart between the tables, playing their own quiet games, their world a forest of adult legs. You watch as a storyteller, his face animated in the firelight, captivates a small circle of listeners with a tale of ancient heroes. You understand now that survival wasn't about toughness, it was about community. This crowded, noisy, and smelly room is the physical embodiment of that principle. Here, the shared body heat of 100 people helps to fight the chill. The shared stories and songs help to fight the crushing boredom and melancholy of the long winter nights. The isolation of winter is kept at bay by this forced but vital communal living. But you also see the less romantic reality of this life. The great chimney, for all its size, is inefficient. A constant, hazy layer of smoke hangs in the high, dark rafters, and you feel your eyes begin to water. There is no privacy here. Every conversation is public. Every action is observed. It is a life lived entirely in the open, with all its small frictions and irritations on full display. As evening turns to night, the trestle tables are cleared and stacked against the walls. But the hall does not empty. You watch as the lower-ranking members of the household, the servants, the men-at-arms simply unroll straw pallets and heavy blankets on the floor. Their beds are here, in the great hall, as close as they can get to the dying embers of the fire. You are shown to your own pallet, not in a private cold chamber, but here among the others. You lie down, the sounds of sleep surrounding you, the gentle snores, the rustle of straw, the soft whimpers of a sleeping dog. You are in a vast, shared bedroom, a world within walls, huddled together for warmth. A meal can be a celebration, a symphony of flavors and textures, but it can also be a simple, grim necessity, a ritual of refueling the body to endure another day of cold and darkness. You are about to sit down to a winter feast, but it is not a feast of pleasure. It is a feast of pure, unadorned survival. You are in the great hall, the noise and smoky warmth, a familiar comfort against the howling wind outside. The trestle tables have been set, and you take your place on a rough wooden bench among the other members of the household. You are about to experience a typical medieval winter meal, a meal born entirely from the foresight and labor of the autumn. There are no individual plates. Your dinner service consists of a wooden spoon, a knife, and a trencher, a thick, flat slice of stale bread that will serve as your plate, designed to soak up the juices of the food. A servant moves down the table, filling your wooden cup with cloudy, weak ale, the liquid bread that provides as many calories as it does cheer. Then, the main course arrives, carried from the kitchens in a massive, steaming cauldron. A thick, grey, lumpy stew is ladled into your bowl. This is pottage, the centerpiece of almost every meal you will eat this winter. You look down into your bowl and see the ingredients of survival. A thick base of barley and oats, studded with the dried beans and peas you saw being stored weeks ago, along with a few mushy pieces of turnip and onion. You take your first spoonful. The taste is nothing. It is bland, earthy, and profoundly monotonous. There is no salt, no pepper, no spice of any kind, as those are luxuries far too expensive for the common table. The pottage is not for enjoyment. It is fuel, a warm, calorie, dense gruel to keep the cold at bay. Next comes a platter of bread. It is not a light, airy loaf, but a heavy, dark bread made from rye or barley, with a crust so thick you have to tear at it with your teeth. It is a hearty, chewy substance, more like the pioneer's hardtack than modern bread, designed to fill the stomach and provide the energy for a day's work. You use it to sop up the tasteless pottage. Finally, the protein arrives. A servant brings a large wooden platter of sliced meat. It is the salted pork you saw being packed into barrels in the autumn. It has been boiled for hours to remove the worst of the salt and make the tough, preserved flesh edible. You take a piece. The texture is stringy, and the taste is overwhelmingly salty, a flavor that seems to have permeated every fiber of the meat. You look around and understand that this is the taste of winter. Meals were simple, hearty, and endlessly repetitive. This combination of pottage, dark bread, and salty boiled meat will be your dinner, with very minor variations, every single day until the spring thaw. The entire household is on strict rations, the preserved food carefully managed to last the season. But then you lift your eyes to the high table, where the Lord and his family are seated. Their meal is different. While you eat the common pottage, you see them being served a roasted pigeon from the castle's dovecote, and you can smell it from across the hall, the exotic, intoxicating aroma of pepper and cloves, expensive spices from the far-off east, used to make their preserved food more palatable. You now see that even in this enclosed communal world, a deep chasm exists between the diet of the rich and the poor. The meal ends. You are full, your stomach heavy with the dense bread and pottage. But you feel a profound sense of dissatisfaction, a deep, unfulfilled craving for a fresh green vegetable, a sweet fruit, or any kind of sharp, interesting flavor. You now understand why, in this world, the discovery of a few wild onions and berries became treasured delicacies. You have learned that the winter diet is not about pleasure or variety. It is a siege ration, a monotonous but necessary fuel to keep the human engine running through the long, cold and tasteless months. In the heart of the longest, darkest nights of the year, humanity has always felt the need to light a fire. A feast in the dead of winter is more than a meal. It is an act of rebellion against the darkness. It is a promise, a memory of abundance, and a defiant celebration of life in a season of death. You are about to take your seat at such a feast. The days leading up to the Nativity are marked by a subtle but profound shift in the castle's atmosphere. The monotonous, grinding routine of winter survival gives way to a quiet, hopeful bustle. You see servants bringing in armfuls of holly, ivy, and mistletoe, their dark green leaves a startling, welcome shock of life against the grey stone walls. The great hall, your smoky and crowded sanctuary, is being transformed. The centerpiece of this transformation is the Yule log. You watch as a team of men drags a colossal log, so large it takes 6 of them to carry it, into the hall and rolls it into the great hearth. The lord of the castle ceremoniously lights it, and as the massive log catches fire, it is a promise of a flame that will burn for the entire 12 days of Christmas, a defiant beacon of warmth and light against the oppressive winter gloom. On Christmas Day, you are summoned to the great hall for the feast. The long, rough trestle tables are covered with clean linen cloths for the first time in months. The hall is crowded, and the air is not filled with the usual smell of damp wool and smoke, but with the intoxicating, long-forgotten aromas of roasting meat and exotic spices. The meal is a piece of theatre. You watch in awe as a procession emerges from the kitchens, led by a steward. He carries a great silver platter, and on it, the centerpiece of the feast, a whole roasted boar's head, complete with an apple in its mouth and its tusks gilded. The procession circles the hall as the household sings a carol in its honor before it is placed before the Lord. This is not the simple, repetitive fare you have grown accustomed to. You are served dishes that are a distant memory from the autumn. There are roasted geese and venison from a winter hunt. There are rich, dark meat pies, their crusts decorated with elaborate patterns. There are sweet puddings, dense with the precious dried fruits and spices that have been saved all year for this occasion. The bread is not the heavy, dark loaf of daily life, but a fine white bread made from wheat. The ale is strong and spiced with nutmeg and clove. You take a bite of the roasted meat, and the rich, savory flavor is an almost overwhelming shock to your palate, which has been dulled by months of salty boiled pork. You taste the sweetness of a spiced pudding, and it feels like an impossible luxury. For this one day, the careful rations are forgotten. This is a day of abundance. But the feast is more than just food. It is a celebration of community. You see that the usual rigid lines of social hierarchy have softened. The Lord shares a joke with one of his knights. The servants are given a larger portion of food and a stronger cup of ale. In this moment of shared hardship, the feast reaffirms the bonds that hold the castle together. As the source material for this series notes, survival wasn't about toughness. It was about community. As the meal winds down, the entertainment begins. Someone might pull out a fiddle, or in this case, a minstrel with a lute begins to play a lively tune. A jester performs tricks, and a group of mummers, dressed in strange folkloric costumes, enacts a traditional play. For these few hours, laughter and music pushed back the darkness. The grim reality of the endless winter is held at bay by the simple, powerful magic of a shared celebration. You are left at the end of the long evening, your stomach full for the first time in months, a pleasant warmth from the spiced ale spreading through you. The Yule log still roars in the hearth. This feast, you realize, was a vital moment of joy, a necessary truce in the long, cold war against winter. It is a reminder of life, of abundance, and of the community that makes survival possible. We live in a world that has largely conquered smell. Our homes are clean, our bodies are washed, and the unpleasant odors of life are kept at a distance. But in the medieval world, smell was a constant, powerful, and unavoidable presence, a language that told you everything about the season and your place in society. You are about to take a deep breath of the past and learn about the endless, and often losing, battle against the filth of a world shut in for winter. It is now deep January, the heart of the winter. You have been inside the sealed fortress of the castle for many weeks, and your senses have begun to adapt to a new and powerful reality, the smell. The castle, once a place of distinct aromas, the hay of the stables, the fire of the forge, now has one single, overarching scent. It is a thick, complex mixture of damp wool, unwashed bodies, stale ale, and the ever-present greasy smoke from the great fire. You trace the sources of the odor. You look down at the rushes covering the great hall floor. Once fresh and sweet-smelling, they are now a trampled, flattened mat, filthy with months of spilled food, discarded bones from the dogs, and the general grime of 100 people living in one room. You see the tapestries on the wall, which have now absorbed the smoke and dampness, giving off a musty, heavy scent of their own. And then there is the simple reality of human bodies. In a world where a hot bath is a monumental undertaking, daily hygiene is a constant and often losing struggle. You are about to witness the immense luxury of a noble's bath. You see servants begin the Herculean task, hauling dozens upon dozens of heavy wooden buckets of water from the well, which they then must heat, bucket by bucket, in cauldrons over the kitchen fire. This hot water is then carried to the Lord's private chamber and poured into a portable wooden tub, lined with a clean linen cloth to prevent splinters. It is an entire afternoon's work for several people, all for a single bath. You understand now why this is a luxury reserved for the highest nobility, and then only as a rare treat. For everyone else, including yourself, the reality of winter hygiene is far simpler and colder. You experience the daily ritual. A small basin of freezing cold water, fetched from the well that morning. You use it to wash your hands and your face. That is all. Full body washing is an ordeal to be undertaken only in the warmth of summer. You learn about the soap they use, a harsh, greasy substance made from animal fat and lye, which is effective for scrubbing the filth from rough linen but is punishing on the skin. It is used sparingly. Since the body and clothes cannot be easily washed, you witness the constant battle to mask the inevitable odors. You see the lady of the castle carrying a pomander, a small perforated ball of silver filled with fragrant spices like clove and ambergris, which she holds to her nose in crowded rooms. You see fresh, sweet-smelling herbs like lavender and chamomile scattered among the clothes in wooden chests, and even strewn among the now filthy rushes on the floor, a small, fragrant defense against the encroaching tide of filth. You have learned that the medieval world was not a place of blissful ignorance about smells. They were acutely aware of the stench. They simply lacked the technology and the resources to effectively combat it in the dead of winter. Theirs was a life of sensory intimacy with the unpleasant realities of the human body and a world without sanitation. Surviving the winter, you now understand, was not just a battle against the cold and hunger, but a constant, close-quarters battle against the smells and the filth of a world sealed in upon itself. We have banished the night. With the flick of a switch, we can turn our homes into islands of perpetual day. We have forgotten the true, profound, and absolute darkness that once ruled half of every human life. You are about to journey into that darkness, to experience a world where light was a precious, flickering, and hard-won commodity. The sun in the depths of winter is a fleeting visitor. It rises late, a weak, pale disk that barely clears the southern horizon, and then sinks again in the mid-afternoon. As you stand in the courtyard, you watch it disappear behind the castle walls, and a deep, swift, and profound darkness falls over the world. The transition is shockingly fast. The world of sight is gone, replaced by a world of sound and shadow. This is the beginning of the longest night, a 16-hour expanse of darkness that must be endured. You retreat into the great hall, where the central fire is the only thing holding the immense darkness at bay. You are about to learn that in the medieval winter, light, like warmth and food, is a form of wealth, a luxury that is distributed according to rank. You watch as a servant moves to the high table, where the lord and his lady are seated. The servant begins to light a series of candles. But these are not ordinary candles. You notice their clean white color, and as they are lit, they burn with a bright, steady, and clear flame. The air around them fills with a faint, sweet, and pleasant scent of honey. These are beeswax candles, an almost unbelievable luxury. You learn that the wax required to make them is a rare and expensive commodity, and their clean, bright light is a status symbol reserved for the church and the highest nobility. Now, you turn your attention to the rest of the hall, to the long trestle tables where the common members of the household are gathered. Here, there are no candles. The light is a different, far more primitive thing. You see a servant go from table to table with a burning ember, lighting the tallow rushlights. You examine one of these strange devices. It is a common rush, a reed harvested from the riverbank, which has been peeled and then dipped repeatedly in the hot, greasy tallow, the rendered animal fat you saw being made after the autumn slaughter. It is held in a simple iron clip. When lit, it does not burn with a clean flame. It sputters and hisses, the melting fat dripping down its side. The light it gives off is a dim, weak, and flickering orange glow, casting long, dancing, and unsettling shadows on the faces around you. And the smell. It is the smell of burning, greasy fat, an unpleasant and acrid odor that joins the ever-present smoke in the air. This is the light of the common person. It is just enough to see the person sitting next to you, just enough to avoid stumbling in the dark, but it is not enough to read by or to do any fine work like sewing. You understand that for most people, the setting of the sun means the end of all productive activity. The long, dark evening stretches before you. With work impossible, the household turns to the one activity that the darkness cannot hinder, the spoken word. The fire is the center of this world. As the source material for this series notes, fires were lit, and someone might pull out a fiddle. You see a minstrel find a place near the hearth, and begin to play a soft, melancholic tune on a lute. A small group gathers around a storyteller, their faces wrapped in the firelight as he spins a tale of ancient kings and mythical beasts. Others huddle together, talking in low voices, their day's work done, with nothing to do but wait for the dawn. You are left to reflect on how profoundly the darkness shapes their lives. The night is not a time for leisure as you know it, but a vast, empty territory to be endured. It is a time of forced inactivity, a time when the world shrinks to the small, smoky, and flickering circle of light from a fire or a foul-smelling rushlight. You have experienced the cold and the hunger of the medieval winter, and now you understand its third great trial, the endless, oppressive, and unconquerable dark. The work of summer is a shout. It is the broad swing of a scythe in the field, the heave of a stone into a wall. But the work of winter is a whisper. It is the quiet hum of a spinning wheel, the patient scrape of a whetstone on a blade, the low murmur of a story told by the fire. You are about to witness this quieter, more intimate season of labor, the season of mending and making. You have become accustomed to the rhythm of life in the great hall, a world contained within stone walls. With the fields frozen and the land asleep under a blanket of snow, the explosive, outdoor energy of the harvest has been replaced by a slow, patient, and constant indoor industry. You learn that winter is not a time of rest, but a time of essential maintenance and creation. You spend your days observing the two distinct worlds of labor that exist in the hall. Your attention is first drawn to the women who have gathered in the area closest to the fire, where the light is best. This is the castle's textile industry in miniature. You watch the beginning of the process, as young girls and servants sit on low stools, carding great piles of raw, greasy wool, their hands skillfully working the fine-toothed paddles to comb and align the fibers. From there, you see the next stage. Women sit with drop spindles, their hands in a constant, graceful dance of drafting and twisting the wool into a strong, continuous thread. In another corner, you hear the rhythmic, gentle hum of a spinning wheel, a more advanced technology, as its operator spins thread with a steady, practiced motion. The air is filled with the soft, lanolin scent of the wool. Finally, you see the purpose of all this thread. At a large, heavy loom set up near a window to catch the weak winter light, a weaver works, her feet pedaling and her hands throwing the shuttle back and forth with a clattering rhythm. You watch, mesmerized, as the simple threads are transformed, inch by patient inch, into a bolt of sturdy, warm woolen cloth. From this cloth, you know, will come the very clothes on your back. You witness other women, including the lady of the castle herself, sitting together, their needles flashing as they sew new garments or, more often, mend the old ones. You understand the truth that governed every household. From the pioneer's cabin to the lord's castle, they swed everything the family wore, often from scratch. The men are not idle. Their work is one of repair and preparation. You see a group of men-at-arms, their chainmail shirts laid out on a table as they painstakingly replace broken links and polish the metal to ward off the ever-present threat of rust. You see a Fletcher, his hands stained and calloused, carefully straightening arrow shafts and attaching new goose-feather fletchings preparing the castle's defences for a war that may or may not come in the spring. In a corner near the hearth, the blacksmith works at a small forge, not on great swords, but on the humble, vital task of sharpening plowshares and repairing tools for the farming season that is still many months away. It is a world of quiet, forward-thinking labour, where, if something needed doing, they did it because there was no one else. As the light begins to fail, the fine work of the hands is put away, and the work of the spirit begins. The evening is a time for the stories and songs that hold the community's culture and history. You listen as an old soldier recounts legends carved out of campfire tales, stories of great battles and heroic kings that keep the past alive. On other nights, someone might pull out a fiddle, or in this case, a lute, and for a few hours, the great hall is filled with music. You feel how this laughter and music pushed back the darkness, a vital medicine against the melancholy of the long winter. You have learned that winter in the castle is not a period of hibernation, but a crucial and productive season. It is a time for turning raw materials into finished goods, for repairing what is broken, and for reinforcing the bonds of community through shared stories and songs. Comfort is an illusion, a fragile bubble of warmth created by a constant, desperate effort. You have lived within that bubble, near the great fire, surrounded by tapestries. But most of a castle is not a home. It is a cold, stone weapon. You are about to spend a night in the weapon, to feel the unblinking, indifferent chill that exists just a few feet away from the hearth. Your journey through the castle's winter life has so far been one of managed comfort. You have felt the warmth of the great hall's fire and learned the secrets of the fortress bed. But tonight, you are to experience a different and far more common reality. You are accompanying one of the castle's knights on his turn to oversee the night watch, and your post is in one of the high towers that guard the outer wall. You climb the narrow, winding stone steps, and with each step upwards, you feel the warmth of the castle's heart recede. You leave the noise and the smoky heat of the great hall far below. You enter the guardroom at the top of the tower, and the change in atmosphere is absolute. This is a room stripped of all comfort. The walls are bare, rough-hewn stone, and you can see a thin, glistening layer of frost on their surface. There are no tapestries here, no wood paneling. There is nothing to stop the profound, penetrating cold of the stone from leaching the warmth from your body. The floor is bare stone, which feels like a sheet of ice through the soles of your leather boots. In the center of the room, a small iron brazier holds a handful of glowing coals, but its meager heat is a pathetic gesture against the immense, overpowering cold of the chamber. The only windows are narrow, vertical arrow slits, designed for defense, not comfort. A brutal, howling wind slices through these openings, a constant cutting draft that no amount of heavy wool can seem to stop. You are reminded of the simple, grim reality of pre-modern life. No matter how well you sealed your home, the wind came in anyway. You huddle with the two guards on watch, your woolen cloak pulled tight around you. But the cold is an insidious enemy. It finds its way through every layer. You feel it radiating from the walls, seeping up from the floor, and riding in on the icy drafts. This, you realize, is the first winter, the season that tested every soul. You are not just uncomfortable, you are in a place where survival is an active struggle. You listen to the old guard, a grizzled man-at-arms, tell stories to pass the long, dark hours. He speaks of a winter years ago when snowstorms might trap them inside for days, and of a young guard who fell asleep at his post and was found in the morning, frozen solid in his chair. The danger of frostbite is not an abstract concept here, it is an ever-present threat. The men constantly stamp their feet and rub their hands, a simple, desperate dance to keep the blood flowing. The night wears on, an eternity of cold and darkness. The howling of the wind is your only companion. You now understand the truth that the warmth of the great hall had hidden from you. The castle is not a warm place with a few cold spots. It is a mountain of cold stone, with a few precious and fiercely guarded pockets of warmth. The life you have experienced in the castle's heart is a privilege. This freezing guardroom is the norm. As the first grey hint of dawn appears through the arrow slit, your watch is over. You stumble down the winding stairs, your body stiff and aching with a cold so deep it feels as if it has settled in your very bones. You push open the heavy door to the great hall. The wave of warmth that greets you is a physical shock. The air, which you had thought of as smoky and stuffy, now feels like a warm, life-giving bath. The fire, which had seemed so inadequate for the size of the hall, now feels like a benevolent Sunday. You have been in the wilderness, and you have returned to civilization. You now understand that the first winter on the frontier wasn't just cold. It was a quiet crucible where dreams were either hardened into resolve or buried beneath the snow. For the men who guard these walls, and for most who live within them, every winter is just such a crucible. In our time, we see the body as a machine and illness as a mechanical failure to be fixed. But in the medieval world, the body was a mysterious landscape, a battleground for invisible forces. Sickness was not a problem of germs, but of humours, of spirits, of divine will. You are about to enter the sick room, a place of fear, prayer, and strange, desperate remedies. The deep winter has taken its toll. The months of cold, dampness, and a monotonous diet have weakened the inhabitants of the castle, leaving them vulnerable. You have learned that in this world, illness was the greatest killer on the trail, and the same is true for the long, stationary journey through the winter. A simple cough in the great hall can cause a ripple of fear. You are there when the sickness strikes. A young squire, a boy of about 14, who just yesterday was full of life and energy, collapses during his morning duties with a violent, racking cough. He is carried to a small, private chamber and put to bed. A fever sets in, and his breathing becomes shallow and ragged. You witness the arrival of the castle's medical authority. It is not a university-trained doctor, but the lady of the castle, a woman whose knowledge of healing has been passed down through generations. She is a master of herbal remedies. You watch as she examines the boy. Her diagnosis is not based on pathogens, but on a much older, more mystical system, the theory of the four humours. The narration explains this ancient belief to you. The body is made of four fluids, or humours: blood, hot and moist; phlegm, cold and moist; yellow bile, hot and dry; and black bile, cold and dry. A healthy person is in perfect balance. Sickness is caused by an excess of one humour. The boy's cough and fever, she determines, are caused by an overabundance of cold, wet phlegm in his chest, a common ailment in the cold, wet winter. The cure, therefore, is to restore balance by applying remedies that are hot and dry. You watch as she puts her theories into practice. She prepares a poultice of hot mustard and pungent herbs, which is placed on the boy's chest, the heat designed to counteract the coldness of the illness. She brews a drink of hot, spiced wine, another hot and dry remedy, but these gentle treatments are not enough. The boy's fever worsens. The next day, a more severe remedy is called for: bloodletting. You are a witness to this grim clinical procedure. The priest, who often doubled as a physician, is summoned. After a prayer, he makes a small, neat incision in a vein on the boy's inner arm. You watch as the dark, corrupted blood is drained into a bowl, the belief being that this will remove the excess humours and restore the body's natural balance. Throughout the ordeal, you understand that this is a spiritual battle as much as a physical one. The priest is a constant presence at the bedside, praying, anointing the boy with holy water, and guarding him against the evil spirits that were believed to bring and feast upon sickness. You are reminded of the stark reality that in this age, there were no doctors, only home remedies and hope. For several days, the entire castle waits. You are in a state of quiet, tense vigil. The boy's fever does not break. He grows weaker. The remedies, born of ancient theory and desperate faith, are not working. You are now facing the grim truth that underlined this entire era, the terrible fragility of life. A sickness that a modern doctor could cure with a simple antibiotic is here a potential death sentence. And, as the source material for this series notes, sometimes hope wasn't enough. The end comes quietly in the middle of the night. You are left with the image of Abba Alcott, her face a mask of stoic grief, as she directs the women to prepare the boy's body for burial. The sense of loss is real and profound, but it is also a familiar part of life. You are reminded of the stoicism required to survive this world, where one might lose a child to fever and still have dinner on the table by sundown. Life, for the rest of the castle, must go on. You have just witnessed a battle fought with prayer and herbs against an enemy no one here understands, a battle that was, all too often, lost. A castle wall is a line drawn between two worlds, the world of order and the world of chaos, the world of man and the world of the beast. In the warmth of summer, that line feels solid and absolute. But in the deep, hungry dark of winter, the line begins to blur. The chaos outside grows desperate, and it presses against the stones, reminding you that civilization is just a small, flickering flame in a vast, wild darkness. It is the heart of winter. A fierce blizzard has been raging for 3 days, and the castle is an isolated island, completely cut off from the outside world by a sea of swirling snow. You are in the great hall, where the entire household is gathered, a fragile community of warmth and light in the midst of the storm. The wind howls around the stone towers, a constant, mournful sound. The work for the day is done, and the long, dark evening stretches ahead. To pass the time, the Lord's master huntsman begins to tell stories. He is an old man, his face a map of wrinkles, and he speaks of the creatures of the forest. But his stories are not the fantastic tales of dragons and griffins you might hear from a minstrel. They are grim, practical, cautionary tales. He speaks of the wolf. He describes the intelligence of a wolf pack, their cunning in the hunt, and their ferocity when driven by the extreme hunger of winter. You listen as he tells of a lone traveler, lost in a snowstorm, and of a remote village that lost half its sheep in a single bloody night. These are not just stories to frighten children. They are real and recent memories, a reminder of the ever-present dangers that lie just beyond the castle walls. You are reminded of the stories of frontier women who sometimes had to fend off wolves, outlaws, and even raiders. As he speaks, there is a lull in the storm. The howling of the wind dies down for a moment, and in the sudden deep silence, a new sound reaches you. It begins as a single, long, mournful howl, a sound that seems to cut through the thick stone walls and chill you to the very bone. It is not the familiar bark of the castle's hounds. It is a wilder, sadder, and much hungrier sound. Then another voice answers it from a different direction, and then another, until a full, unnerving chorus of howls rises from the darkness outside. A hush falls over the great hall. The huntsman's story is no longer needed. The real thing is just outside. Even the great hounds sleeping by the fire seem to sense it, their ears twitching, a low growl rumbling in their chests. The sound is the voice of the wilderness itself, a reminder that the world outside is not just empty and cold, it is alive, and it is starving. You now understand the fear of the early pioneers, for whom the sound of the wild was a constant presence. Coyotes howled in the dark, wolves circled. Driven by a mixture of fear and fascination, you follow one of the guards as he makes his way up the winding stairs to the battlements. You step out onto the wall walk, and the cold hits you like a physical blow. The wind is ferocious, whipping fine, sharp particles of snow into your face. The world is a stark, monochromatic landscape of white snow and black night, illuminated by the cold, pale light of a winter moon. You peer down from the safety of the wall, and you see them. A pack of wolves, their dark, lean shapes moving like shadows against the snow. They are not attacking. They are simply there, just beyond the moat, a silent, circling presence, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. They have been drawn by the scent of the livestock and the distant promise of food, their natural fear of man overcome by the desperation of winter. You stand there for a long time, a silent observer on the wall, looking down at the wild, hungry creatures below. The guard beside you is not alarmed. He is watchful, his hand resting on his spear. This, for him, is just another night in a medieval winter. But for you, it is a profound and chilling realization. You now understand the true purpose of these great stone walls. They do not just protect you from opposing armies. They are a dam holding back the vast, chaotic, and hungry ocean of the wilderness. In a world of shared hardship, there is still a hierarchy of comfort. A king may shiver, but his servants freeze. You have lived in the communal, smoky warmth of the great hall, a world shared by all. Now, you are about to ascend, to step behind the curtain and into the private world of the Lord, to a place where warmth is not just a byproduct of a great fire, but a deliberate and jealously guarded privilege. The evening is drawing to a close in the great hall. The final stories have been told, the last of the music has faded, and the household is beginning to settle down for the night. The great fire has been banked, its roar reduced to a low, crackling hum, and the chill of the night begins to creep back into the vast stone chamber. The lord and his lady rise from the high table to retire for the night. As a trusted guest, you are given a rare honor, an invitation to join them in their private chamber for a final cup of spiced wine. You follow their procession, leaving the public, communal world of the great hall behind. A servant with a beeswax candle leads you to a heavy oak door and up a narrow, winding spiral staircase. With every step upwards, the noise and the smoke of the hall below recede, replaced by a quiet and a surprising, gentle warmth. The servant unbolts another door, and you are ushered into the Lord's private chamber, the solar. You step inside, and the difference is immediate and profound. The first thing that strikes you is the warmth. It is not the scorching, directional heat of the great fire you just left. It is a soft, pervasive, and gentle warmth that seems to radiate from the very floor beneath your feet. You look around the room, and you understand the architectural genius of the medieval castle. The narration explains it to you. The solar is the heart of the fortress's warmth, and its secret is its location. You are standing directly above the ceiling of the great hall. The massive stone and timber floor you are standing on has been absorbing the radiant heat from the roaring fire below all day and all evening. It has become, in effect, a gigantic, slow-release storage heater, and it is this retained heat that now gently warms the chamber from below. This is the pinnacle of medieval comfort, a world away from the rest of the castle. You take in the details of the room. The cold stone walls are completely hidden behind thick, richly coloured tapestries, their woven scenes of hunts and chivalry creating a soft, insulated cocoon. The floor, which you can feel is already warm, is covered with another layer of expensive carpets from the east, their plush texture a luxury underfoot. A smaller, more efficient fireplace crackles merrily in one corner, adding its own direct heat to the room's cosy atmosphere. The air is clean and smells of beeswax from the numerous candles that cast a bright, steady, and pleasant light. This is more than a bedroom. It is a private living room, an office, and a sanctuary. In one corner stands the great four-poster bed, its heavy curtains tied back for now, a fortress of fabric waiting to be deployed against the night. In another corner is a small table where you now sit with the Lord and his lady, sipping your warm, spiced wine. You are in the true seat of power in the castle. The noise, the smells, and the lack of privacy of the great hall are a world away. Here, in this quiet, warm and secure chamber, is where the Lord can speak freely, make his plans, and rule his domain. You have been granted a brief glimpse into the hidden world of the elite, and you see that their greatest luxury is not their food or their clothes, but this small, precious bubble of warmth. The evening ends. You are escorted from the solar, back down the cold, winding staircase. As the heavy door closes behind you, the warmth is cut off as if by a knife. You descend back into the chill and the shadows of the main castle. The contrast is jarring. You have experienced a level of comfort that is almost unimaginable for the other 99% of the castle's inhabitants. You now know where the true fortress against the frost lies. Not in the great outer walls, but here, in this small, privileged room, floating on a sea of rising heat. A bed is the most intimate of spaces, a private island where we spend a third of our lives. It is a stage for birth, for sickness, and for death. In the medieval world, the great bed of a lord was all of that, and something more. It was a symbol of his power, a display of his wealth, and, on a cold winter's night, his final and most important fortress. You are in the solar, the lord's private chamber, and the night has grown late. The fire in the hearth has been banked, its cheerful roar reduced to a low hypnotic pulse of glowing embers. As the room's main source of heat dies down, you begin to feel the familiar, insidious chill of the stone walls returning. It is time for the final ritual of the day, the preparation of the last and most effective fortress against the cold, the great bed. The bed dominates the room. It is a monumental piece of furniture, a testament to the Lord's status, crafted from heavy, dark oak and intricately carved with images of saints and mythical beasts. You examine its construction and see that it is a world away from the simple piles of straw, furs, or corn husks that most people sleep on. The mattress is not a simple bag of straw, but a complex, layered system. You see the base of tightly woven rope strung across wooden frames, which provides a kind of spring. On top of this is a thick pallet stuffed with clean straw, and on top of that, a second, softer mattress, a precious feather bed filled with the down of countless geese. The bedding itself is a landscape of warmth. You see the fine, smooth linen sheets, a luxury in a world of scratchy wool. On top of them are piled not one but several heavy woolen blankets, and finally a magnificent coverlet made from the soft, thick fur of wolves or a bear, its weight a promise of deep, insulating warmth. But the true genius of the great bed you are about to witness is not in its mattress or its blankets. It is in its architecture. You watch as a servant begins the nightly ritual. She takes a long-handled brass pan, the bed warmer, fills it with hot coals from the dying fire, and then slides it between the cold linen sheets, moving it back and forth to chase away the damp chill. Then comes the final, crucial step. The lord and lady prepare to retire. Two servants go to the corners of the great four-poster bed. You watch as they pull the curtains shut. These are not light decorative drapes. They are immense, heavy curtains of velvet, lined with wool, that hang from the canopy all the way to the floor. As they are drawn, they enclose the bed completely, the thick fabric overlapping to seal every gap. The bed is no longer a piece of furniture in a room. It has become its own room, a small, insulated chamber of fabric, a fortress against the cold. You understand the profound ingenuity of the design. The wooden canopy above protects the sleepers from any cold drafts descending from the high, dark ceiling. The heavy, multi-layered curtains trap the body heat of the sleepers inside, creating a warm, personal microclimate. While the temperature in the larger stone chamber may drop to near freezing, inside this fabric tent, it will remain comfortable, even warm. You are reminded that in this world, privacy was a luxury few could afford. This curtained space is one of the few truly private places in the entire castle, a sanctuary for the lord and his lady. It is the ultimate status symbol, a declaration that they not only have the wealth to own such a magnificent object, but that they have the power to command their own private bubble of warmth. The servants give a final bow and depart, leaving you in the now chilly main chamber. The only light comes from the dying embers. You look at the great bed, now a silent, fabric-walled cube in the center of the room. It is the final and most effective line of defense in the long, nightly war against the medieval winter. Survival is not always a grand battle. More often, it is a series of small, quiet victories won each day. It is the mending of a cloak, a hot meal, a story told by the fire. You are about to witness one of the most intimate of these victories, a nightly ritual that wages a small, warm war against the cold and the damp, a simple act that turns a bed from a place of shivering into a place of sanctuary. You are in the solar, the Lord's private chamber, at the end of a long winter's night. The fire in the hearth has burned down to a deep, mesmerizing bed of glowing embers, its radiant heat slowly surrendering to the persistent chill of the stone walls. The heavy curtains of the great bed are tied back, revealing the neatly turned down linen sheets. The Lord and his lady are preparing to retire, and you are a silent witness to the final, crucial ritual of their day. An older servant woman enters the room. She moves with a quiet, practiced familiarity. This is a task of great trust, and she is a senior member of the household staff. In her hands she carries a long-handled object made of polished brass or copper. It is a bed warmer, a tool as essential to a comfortable winter's night as the blankets themselves. You watch her as she performs this slow, almost meditative ritual. First, she kneels before the hearth. She uses a small iron shovel to carefully select the best of the glowing embers from the fire, avoiding any ash or smoking pieces. She gently places these hot coals inside the hinged metal pan of the bed warmer and closes the perforated lid, securing it with a latch. You understand the immense care this requires. A single stray spark, a loose coal falling from the pan, could instantly ignite the straw-filled mattress and the dry linen sheets, turning this sanctuary of warmth into a deadly inferno. With the coals safely enclosed, she approaches the great bed. She pulls back the heavy fur coverlet and the layers of woolen blankets, exposing the cold, smooth, and slightly damp-feeling linen sheets. The air in a stone castle is never truly dry, and the sheets have absorbed the chill of the room. To climb into such a bed would be a shivering, unpleasant ordeal. The servant then slides the warm metal pan between the sheets, and the real work begins. She does not simply let it sit. She begins a slow, constant and careful motion, sliding the pan back and forth, up and down the entire length of the bed. You hear the soft, muffled scraping sound as the metal moves against the fabric. You watch the faint, warm glow of the coals, visible through the holes in the lid, as it travels like a captured willow, the wisp beneath the sheets. She works with a patient, focused expertise, ensuring that every part of the bed is evenly warmed and that no single spot becomes too hot. She is not just heating the bed, she is chasing away the deep, insidious dampness, replacing it with a dry, penetrating warmth. This simple, repetitive act is a small but profound battle against the castle's ever-present chill. After 10 or 15 minutes of this slow, careful work, the ritual is complete. The servant removes the bed warmer, its heat now much diminished. She will take it away to be emptied and cleaned, ready for the next night. The bed is now prepared. The Lord and his lady climb into the bed, and you can almost feel their relief as they sink into the deep, pre-warmed comfort of the feather mattress and the now toasty linen sheets. The servant gives a final respectful bow and then pulls the heavy velvet curtains shut, enclosing the bed and its occupants in their private fortress of warmth for the night. You are left in the main part of the chamber as the last of the candles are extinguished. The room is now cold and dark, but you have just witnessed the quiet, unsung ritual that makes the night bearable for the castle's most important residents. It is a perfect, final example of the immense human effort and ingenuity required to create even a small pocket of comfort in the heart of a medieval winter. The bedroom in our time is the most private of spaces, a room with a closed door, a sanctuary for the self. We think of sleep as a solitary act, a retreat from the world. But this is a modern invention. In the medieval world, sleep, like life itself, was a communal affair. You are about to witness a nightly ritual where privacy is traded for a far more valuable commodity, warmth. You are in the solar, the Lord's private chamber. The bed has been warmed, the fire is a bed of glowing embers, and the heavy curtains of the great four-poster bed have been drawn shut, creating a dark, silent fabric fortress in the center of the room. You expect this to be the end of the day, a final retreat into privacy. But the night's rituals are not yet over. You hear the soft patter of small feet, and a nursemaid enters, leading the Lord's two young children, already dressed for bed in their long linen nightshirts. You might expect them to be taken to a separate nursery, a room of their own, but instead, the nursemaid pulls back one of the heavy velvet curtains of the great bed, and the children scramble in, burrowing under the heavy fur coverlets to join their parents. You watch this scene, and you understand that the great bed is not just a marital chamber, it is the family's shared winter nest. In a world of cold stone and ever-present drafts, the logic is simple and undeniable. The more bodies inside the small curtained space, the warmer it will be. The combined body heat of the family, trapped by the layers of fabric, creates a pocket of warmth that a single person could never achieve. The surprises are not over. A trusted squire, a young man in service to the Lord, enters the chamber and gives a quiet bow. He goes to the side of the great bed and pulls out a low, simple bed on small wooden wheels. This is a trundle bed. He unrolls his own thin mattress and a single woolen blanket upon it, positioning it at the foot of his master's bed, just outside the curtains. He will sleep here all night, a guardian and a human radiator in one. You now see the full picture of the medieval bedchamber. It is not a private space. It is a communal one, a complex and intimate arrangement of social hierarchy and shared survival. You are reminded of the pioneers on the trail, for whom families slept in the wagons, under them or beside them, and you realize that for most of history, privacy was a luxury few could afford. Here, in the heart of the castle, the principle is the same. The Lord's great bed is a luxurious version of the pioneer's shared wagon, a place where the family huddles together for safety and warmth. You look around the room. In the corner, near the last, faint heat of the dying hearth, two of the Lord's favourite hunting hounds are curled up, their own furry bodies adding to the room's total warmth. You contrast this scene with the world outside this chamber. You think of the common servants, who at this very moment are sleeping on simple piles of straw on the floor of the great hall, huddled together in a great anonymous mass for warmth. You now see that even the manner of communal sleeping is a mark of status. The final candle is extinguished. The chamber is plunged into a deep, quiet darkness. The only sounds are the gentle breathing of the sleepers in the great bed, the soft snores of the squire on his trundle bed, and the sigh of the wind outside the thick castle walls. You are left to reflect on this profoundly different understanding of life. You have witnessed a world where the need for warmth and security completely overrides any modern notion of personal space. In the long, cold and dangerous night of the medieval winter, the greatest comfort was not in being alone, but in being together, protected by the presence and the simple, life-giving heat of other human beings. Every winter is a siege, a long and quiet war against the cold and the dark. But it is a war that is never truly won, only endured. For the true victory belongs not to man, but to the Sunday. You have endured the long night. Now, you are about to witness the return of the light, the great, silent, and inevitable triumph of the spring. It is now March. You have been immured in the castle for what feels like an eternity. The festive cheer of Christmas is a distant, half-forgotten memory. The larder is at its lowest. The firewood pile has dwindled to a small, precious mound, and the faces of the household are pale and thin, marked by the long months of darkness and privation. The mood in the great hall is one of deep, weary, and silent endurance. The only goal is to make it to the end. One morning, you are in the outer bailey, and you feel something different. For the first time in months, the air does not have its familiar, biting, razor-sharp edge. There is a subtle softness to it. You look up at the sky, and you see the sun, a weak but persistent presence in the clouds. And you feel its light on your face, not as a cold, distant glare, but with a faint, almost imperceptible touch of genuine warmth. Then you hear a new sound, a sound you have not heard for a very long time. It is the gentle, rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water falling from the castle eaves. The thick crust of ice and snow on the rooftops has begun to melt. The profound, frozen silence of the winter is beginning to break. You walk the perimeter of the courtyard, your boots sinking into ground that is no longer as hard as iron, but has a slight give to it. The smell of the air has changed. The sterile, sharp scent of frost has been replaced by the rich, damp and living smell of thawing earth. It is the smell of renewal. Driven by a new, quiet hope, you walk to a sheltered spot at the base of the southern castle wall, a place that catches the most of the day's weak Sunday. And there, you see it, a small, brave cluster of snowdrops. Their delicate, white, bell-shaped heads have pushed up through a patch of melting snow. You kneel down to look at them. They are a thing of impossible beauty and resilience, a small, fragile flag of surrender from the winter. In this moment, you feel a sense of relief so profound and so overwhelming that it is almost a physical weight being lifted from your shoulders. It is a feeling you imagine is kin to that of the pioneer, who, after weeks or even months on the trail, the sight of trees, water, and flat land was enough to make a pioneer fall to their knees in gratitude. The news of the thaw and the first flowers spreads quickly through the castle. You see the change in the people. A genuine smile from a serving girl. A more boisterous laugh from a man-at-arms in the great hall. The oppressive, psychological weight of the long darkness begins to lift. They have survived. They have endured another winter. But you understand now that the end of one struggle is simply the beginning of another. The arrival of spring does not mean a time of rest. You see the castle stir with a new and different kind of energy. The farmers are already in the barns, sharpening the blades of their ploughs, preparing the seed for the first planting. The great gates of the castle are thrown open, and you see riders heading out to check the condition of the roads and bridges. Life, which had contracted to the single warm heart of the great hall, is now beginning to expand outwards once more. Your journey as a guest is coming to an end. You stand on the battlements, looking out over a landscape of melting snow and muddy, waking earth. You have witnessed the full, relentless cycle of a medieval winter. The careful preparations, the grim endurance, and now, the hopeful rebirth. You have learned that survival in this world was a matter of community, of foresight, and of a deep, patient resilience. The long siege is over. And so, the castle's long war against the frost concluded, not with the clash of swords, but with the gentle blooming of a single snowdrop. Your own long journey of the day is also complete. The preparations and hardships are over. Let the memory of the cold stone recede, and the howl of the winter wind be stilled. Your fortress is secure, and it is time to rest. If our long winter's stay within the castle walls has helped you relax tonight, a quiet like is always appreciated. And if you would like to explore more journeys into the past with us, consider subscribing. Thank you for joining me within the fortress. May your hearth burn bright, and may your sleep be as deep and peaceful as the first thaw of spring. Until our next story, sleep well.